Well, let's go ahead and just welcome everybody. So, welcome everyone here to our program, and I think we're broadcasting to Zoom and also to the worldwide Facebook page. So, great to have you with us. And I'm Steve Farrell, the worldwide executive director for Humanities Team, and of course, Humanities Team is a 17-year-old 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is to support people on their conscious journey to create this planetary awakening and to manifest flourishing in all parts of our life. And those three things actually all go together. So that's why we're here. And as a nonprofit, of course, we don't have any shareholders. There are no sales targets, revenue or profit within Humanities Team. It's all just how can we run the mission? So thank you for being here with us. And I want to just shout out too to the community circle members, the Humanities Stream members, people that are going through the master classes, and the most current one, You Are Limitless, that is starting here shortly with Michael Bernard Beckwith and Panache Desai. But also Technology, Consciousness, and Evolution with Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton, and Lynn McTaggart, the Conscious Leadership people that's my own program with wonderful faculty that come in. And then all of the other, we've got quite a few other master classes so any of you that might be going through that. And then our Humanities Team leadership team, the people on Facebook, and all of you on Zoom. So welcome, and thanks for being here with us. So let me go ahead and give a formal introduction to Nauman Naeem. He is our special guest today, and let me give you a formal introduction here to Nauman. He's really a special friend. We've done programs with him before. Love the work that he's up to, the book that he's written, and just the person that he is. So Dr. Naeem is a physician specializing in pulmonary and critical care medicine, whose intellectual journey has taken him far beyond the confines of conventional medicine. After completing medical school at Ibero-American University, he did his training in internal medicine at Case Western Reserve University's Metro Health Medical Center, and his training in pulmonary and critical care at University Hospitals of Cleveland. After his training, he practiced pulmonary and critical care in Northwestern Ohio for 6 years before moving to Southern Ontario, where he practices the same at Humber River Hospital and Gulf General Hospital. Over the course of his career, he has treated tens of thousands of patients and has realized that the majority of patients with chronic diseases do not heal, a percentage of whom have no desire to heal. This realization compelled him to dive deeper into the psychology of healing, human consciousness, metaphysics, and healing traditions from the past through his own personal research and study to uncover how we can facilitate healing in his patients and clients. The product of this inquiry is the book, Healing from the Inside Out, Overcome Chronic Disease and Radically Change Your Life. This is Nauman's book. The principles in this book can be applied to many situations, including improving personal relationships, finding your life's purpose and mission, and increasing focus, productivity, and creativity. He now coaches clients in how to achieve their highest potential and beyond. Welcome to the program, Nauman. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Steve, for that generous introduction. And I'm great. It's great to be here and have this conversation with you and your listeners.
Fantastic. Yes, and we're here with our Zoom and people out on the worldwide Facebook page. So thank you all for taking a moment here with us. We're going to have really a fantastic 60-minute program. We're going to talk a little bit, and then once we get deeper into the program, we're going to be inviting your comments and questions, including from Facebook. We'll pull your comments and questions up too. So if there are things that you want to know about, go ahead and make note, because in a little bit, we're going to invite you to come in. So Nauman, I shared with you kind of how we know you. But do you want to talk a little bit about your mission and purpose and, in the work you do?
Yeah. So, Steve, for the longest time, I've always been interested in human behavior and human potential. And, this journey started in my teen years. And it may be timely to discuss this because when I was growing up, like I grew up in east of Toronto in a small town, and we were the only, like I'm of South Asian origin, and we were the only South Asian family in that community. I was the only South Asian kid in my school, and I faced a lot of racism and a lot of discrimination and a lot of challenges growing up. And I did not have that emotional support to deal with what I was going through, right? Because my parents were immigrants. They came to England, and I was born there in London, England, and then they immigrated here when I was 5 years old. So they didn't understand the society and the culture that we were growing up in, and I didn't have a lot of that emotional support. So the way I dealt with it was by just excelling, like learning as much as I can, doing well in school because that's what I knew. And then I just got interested, like why was I being treated this way? Like why was I seen as different just because of the color of my skin, right? So I started diving deep into what we now call personal development. So at that time, the prominent authors were people like Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer, and Tony Robbins had just emerged at that time. So I dove deep into these authors and speakers, and I started reading their works. And that's how I got interested in human potential and human behavior. And I actually wanted to do what they do. I wanted to be what they are. But at that time, when I was a teenager and an adolescent, there was no internet, and there was not a lot of, this was not prominent at that time. So, I was always interested in sciences. I was always interested in learning, and I chose a profession in medicine because it seemed to incorporate all the different things that interested me. Increasing my knowledge, science. I was good in science, and being of service to humanity in a relatively stable profession. So I did that, as you said. I went to medical school, I did my training. And then I kind of got away from that human potential, human behavior interest because I got so busy. And then during that time, I got married, started having kids. But then when I got into practice, I started to realize, people just were not getting better. They were not healing. I mean, they were stuck in this paradigm of chronic disease. Now, the medical system is great when you have an acute problem. You fracture a hip, you have a traumatic injury, you have an infection that needs antibiotics, something like that. But I found that it was not really serving those people with chronic disease, like things like heart disease and diabetes and cancer and COPD and other hypertension, all these other things. So I started diving again deeply into this whole area of not just personal development, but I started looking at healing traditions. I started looking at the psychology of healing, as you mentioned. I started looking at consciousness and metaphysics. And by that time, the internet had obviously emerged, and I had more access to this. And I just uncovered so much that I felt was being ignored by conventional medicine. And now you have all sorts of people that are starting to do this work, like people like Lissa Rankin and Kelly Brogan and Bernie Siegel and others, right? But then I started to try to apply these principles to my patients, and I said, I was working like, all I could do was help one patient at a time, and I was always interested. I've been a voracious reader all my life. I always wanted to be an author. So I started putting my ideas down in paper, and that culminated in the writing of my book, Healing from the Inside Out, Overcome Chronic Disease, and Radically Change Your Life, which came out in 2017. And now I've been on a journey to try to bridge two worlds, the world of conventional medicine and a more whole health, a multifaceted approach. And what's happening now with the pandemic is quite timely, for what I've been doing. So that's my story in a nutshell. I don't know if you call it a nutshell, but that's what, yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, fantastic. There's so many things that we want to talk about inside of that story. And at first, I just want to say thank you, for being the contributor that you are to this, humanities team, sometimes we call it that U-turn, where
Hmm.
we're at the top of the left of the U, it's unconscious living, which in medicine, in all really spheres of life, is largely happening even today. And then
Yeah.
we come down that U, or we start releasing these unconscious programs and unconscious thoughts that really don't serve us at all. And
Right.
then we come down around to the bottom where of release, and then as we're opening to conscious ways of living, we come up the right side of that U into
Yeah.
all of the real true prosperity, true flourishing, beyond sustainability, all of those things.
Hmm.
Um, the One of the things that is surprising to me is that that it's taking so long actually for this journey to occur, because likewise when I grew up in the 70s, and I would read the Washington Post. I lived in Northern Virginia, Washington D.C. area, and Washington Post is a great paper.
Right.
And I was reading about climate change even then in the early 70s and things. And then also, like you, started reading conscious authors and things. And it just was so clear that we had a compass here, and true north was evident.
Hmm.
So it was surprising to me that we weren't really headed in that direction. And we just seemed like there was all this awareness that was going on that was making very clear that everything is deeply connected and
Yes.
interrelated and interdependent. In fact, an emanation of the one, and even the Big Bang from our astronomy class kind of speaks to how that occurs.
Right.
But it seemed like there was just, even though the awareness was occurring, nobody seemed to want to act on it. And I love that in actually even outside of medicine, because you're coaching and so on, probably outside of medicine, but in medicine, you're really applying all of these principles. And I think, in my understanding your story, where you were watching these chronically ill people that you didn't see wanted to heal themselves, you just started writing about what we can do and how we can live, and how we can rise above even chronic illness. And
Yeah.
which is so incredibly valuable, because there's nothing worse than chronic illness. We can't really enjoy life at all when we're chronically ill.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, I want to I just thank you and congratulate you on what you've been able to do. Um, so
Thank you.
uh, so Nauman, let's just talk about, maybe because of the pandemic and George Floyd, and we were just talking here in the green room before we came onto the program
Yeah.
about this auspicious time, this moment where there's an opportunity for a real pivot. Do you bring in what you see and your thoughts, please?
Yeah. So let's go back before the pandemic. If you look at, the last, not just several decades, if you look at the last, several hundred years, um, what we see is that we've been living as a global society very unsustainably. Okay. So, you know, we were talking in the green room about the American dream, right? I mean, the American dream is just kind of driven by profit and just the self. The American dream is a self-driven, just individually driven, right? And it doesn't take into account all the different aspects of living on this planet. So when I talk about unsustainable living, I'm talking about several things, right? So we can look at things like climate change. We can look at the pollution of our atmosphere and the oceans, and how this has been largely ignored by global governments. Although there's been some attempts at with climate accords and that sort of thing, but largely ignored, especially by like the major governments in the world. We can talk about things like the disparity between the rich and the poor, which has been increasing. We can look at things like terrorism, which has been a major issue in the media over the last 20 years, I would say even longer. But then when we talk about something like that, and is we have nobody looks at the roots, right? Nobody goes to the roots. So why are these people from other parts of the world carrying out these terrorist attacks. I mean, we don't look at the fact that, these countries have been run by dictatorships that have been supported by Western governments, and they haven't had the opportunity that we have in the Western world, right? And then we can look at something like human trafficking that's been on the rise, which is a form of slavery. I mean, that's slavery and exploitation, right? I mean, we say that, slavery has been abolished for quite a long time, in most of the world, but we have this unofficial slavery, not just the human trafficking, but exploitation of marginalized populations by multinational corporations, finding cheap labor to produce their products. And then the unsustainability of our healthcare system, how our focus has been just on, looking for drugs to treat all these chronic conditions, when we know now, there may not be randomized controlled trials, which is what pharmaceutical companies use to bring their drugs to market, but we know that our thoughts, our emotions, stress, our lifestyles, our nutrition, our movement, the amount of sleep we get, all these things impact chronic disease. You don't need a randomized controlled trial to prove these things. And the difference is that dealing with these things, the nutrition, the stress, lifestyle, dealing with our thoughts and emotions, there's no side effects to that. Like there is side effects to medication. So we've been living unsustainably for a long time. And I think that most of the people who listen to your program here realize that, otherwise they wouldn't be here. So, what's happened, I believe, with this pandemic is that, we've been forced to quarantine. I see it as the great pause. And it's this great pause in the sense that, a lot of things that we were doing back in December, maybe even January and February, we are no longer doing. A lot of people are working from home. Some people have lost their jobs. Some people have been laid off. The nature of education has had to change, has gone online. So it's almost as though the universe has sent us to our rooms. Go to your room and you need to think about what you've been doing for the last few decades, the last several hundred years. And when I say go to your room, I'm talking about humanity. And, we can look at, there's so much, when we look at what's happening with COVID-19 and the pandemic, it's so easy to focus on the negative, right? But then let's look at the positives. Let's look at the positives, right? A lot of major cities in the world are seeing a decrease in pollution, okay? There's less cars on the road, there's less manufacturing. Some of that has been forced to shut down. People are spending more time with their families because there's not a lot you can do outside. I realize we're emerging out of this pandemic now, but still, there's a lot of shutdown. So spending more time with our families, we have more time to ourselves now to really, really think and really ponder how we've been living our lives, not as just a global community, but individually, right? Because, mental illness has been on the rise, depression has been on the rise, suicide has been on the rise, addiction has been on the rise. We really have to look at why there's such a, we talk about the pandemic, COVID-19, long before this pandemic, there was a pandemic of depression, pandemic of of opioid addiction, a pandemic of suicide, pandemic of chronic stress. The biggest pandemics in the world are the pandemics of chronic stress and negative thinking. So I'm looking at this as the universe telling us, go to your room and think about how you've been living and reassess where you've been, where you're at, and where you want to go as a global community, as humanity, and as individuals.
Yeah, boy, I love that. I haven't heard the go to your room, but I feel exactly the same way. And that's a nice way to describe it. And it's what I believe too. And humanities team, we were, again, we were talking here before the program, and it's hard to talk about a silver lining and positives because, of course, there's all of this loss of life and
Right.
families that have been affected, and
Yes.
people that are running companies that are losing businesses, and there's a
Yeah.
great deal of pain. And I believe our creator, the divine, we call her slash him, and humanities team has her arms around everybody and is holding them close now. But there is an existential crisis here on the earth,
Yes.
and if we don't act, if we don't convert the pause to reset, it gets much worse in terms of the consequences and the implications to our
Mhm.
kids and generations after that.
Right.
It really is our moment where we pivot, or we don't. There's no do-over. It really has to happen now.
Right.
Let's
Yeah.
pivot in a direction
Yeah.
here, because the interesting thing is that, and we were talking a little bit about this too earlier, is it's not like there's a sacrifice, when
Mhm.
we become conscious. It's actually just the opposite of, we
Right.
find true prosperity, a thriving world. It's actually loving, very much of a loving thing, which extends to work, by the way. My partners in humanities team, who you'll meet at the end, um, we've created it was just a loving environment where it's deeply relational and we listen to each other, and it's really just about the big agenda. So it's not, nobody needs to be right or my idea or anything like that. It's what's going to elevate us to be, to support people as well as we possibly can who are on this conscious journey, and who want who desire planetary awakening and are working toward that and want to create the flourishing out in the world. And candidly, I came from Silicon Valley. A lot of people know my story. Even where there's incredible financial success, often it doesn't even exist in the family because it's such a rat race that where you're just burning up time for
Yeah.
that revenue growth and that profit growth,
Yeah.
that the individual is suffering really, and so is the family, and certainly the coworkers and so on. So by contrast, now where we just go to your room, as you say, Nauman, which is a nice way to put it, and where we get in touch with our deeply held values, and candidly, the creator within, the divine, the cosmos within, love within, life within,
Mhm.
um, and develop a relationship there, because we are a part of the one, which is another thing we understand on our conscious journey. There's so many beautiful and good things that come out of it, and we finally find that dream, which is not the American dream, which is the elusive one of where there's no there, because you get to so many million, and then you want to double that, and then so many million, and then you want to double that. You never can get there.
Right.
And in this flourishing world where we really get in touch with it, there is a there. We can experience it. And I
Yeah.
know, Nauman, you, with your family and coworkers, I'm sure in the work you do, you must be a light that's walking around. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I try my best. So I just want to just address a couple of things you had said. I do not deny that there is a lot of pain at this time because of the loss of life. So I don't want anyone to think that I don't that I've seen patients die of COVID. So I acknowledge that there is a lot of pain and suffering at this time because of that loss of life, and also the pain and suffering from the loss of finances, being laid off, job loss, restructuring, that sort of thing. So I'm not denying that. But, often when you're going in a certain direction, and I'm talking about humanity, you need some sort of cataclysmic event for people to realize that you're in the wrong direction. You need to change course. And unfortunately, that often involves these experiences which are difficult and challenging, right? So I don't deny the pain and suffering that people are going through, but I would just ask that you really look at your life individually, right? And this is what I try to do. So you asked me about, how am I being a light in my own circles, right? So, during this whole time, like in the healthcare system, amongst my colleagues, like physicians and nurses and respiratory therapists, I see a lot of fear. They're all like, all this fear, and it's driven by the media frenzy around this pandemic and COVID-19. But, let's put this into context, right? You know, a lot more people die of heart disease, of cancer, of addiction, being of overdose from opioids, even from suicide, than they have died of from COVID-19 up until now. Why were these things not being discussed in the media? Why were those things not declared a pandemic, right? So I'm just saying that to put the fear in a context. The thing is, I see this fear amongst my colleagues, but I haven't had that fear. And it's because of several things. It's because I understand at a spiritual or existential level what is happening right now on the planet. I see it in a greater light than is being propagated by the media and social media and public opinion, right? So I try to impart that knowledge to my colleagues, right? And let's just take it at a more basic level. Let's take it to a very basic level. In terms of, contracting COVID-19 and getting sick, there's so many things you can do. It's not just about wearing masks and physical distancing and quarantining. There's so many things you can do with your immunity. Vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and all sorts of things. And I don't want to get into that because that's not the topic of this teaching. But there's so many things you can do, even with your lifestyle, right? You can protect yourself. So, but beyond that, this negativity that I'm seeing in society, and I feel that what's happening is that, I said earlier that negative thinking is a pandemic on our planet. Chronic stress is a pandemic on our planet. I feel that all the media frenzy around COVID-19 is triggering people who have been dealing with that negative thinking in other realms of their life, that chronic stress, and this is just triggering people, right? So I'm trying to help people in my immediate, people who I work with, and also through my blog and online, and with a new course that I'm teaching, to realize that, you know, it, all of this starts with, your thoughts, your limiting beliefs, and how you deal with all the feelings and emotions around what's happening, right? So, so that's how I try to impart that light. I try to help people understand that, you know, this is not what you have to fear. I'm not saying you don't take precautions. I'm not saying you don't do the distancing and taking precautions and quarantining if you need to. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that, look, this is a time to really, because we've all been forced to slow down, to really re-examine your thoughts. I mean, what are the thoughts that you think on a daily basis? Are they largely negative thoughts? Are they positive thoughts? Are you where you want to be in your life? I mean, take this time to re-examine where you are. Are you exactly where you want to be? And if you're not, what are the areas of your life where you need to make changes? I mean, a lot of people have been forced to quarantine, and then, I've heard of, whole families are together throughout the day when kids used to go to school, parents used to go to work. And then I've heard of a lot of like conflict amongst, married couples and other people who are in relationships, because you've been forced to be to be together for a longer period of time. But then you have to look at that. Why is that arising? Why is that emerging, right? I mean, is it something to do with the relationship? Is there something that needs to be addressed? So I'm trying to help people realize, number one, there's a lot they can do to protect themselves from this COVID-19. But in addition, to really look at the fear and the stress they're feeling, and is COVID-19 just a trigger for something that's always been there? And why has it always been there? Why have you had this negative thinking, these limiting beliefs? Why have you been living with this chronic stress? Because when I look at fear, right, there are two types of fear. There's an actual fear and there's a psychological fear. So an actual fear is a real threat to your life. And I'm not saying COVID-19 is not a real threat to your life. If you get sick and end up in the hospital, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that there's a lot of precautions you can take. But an actual fear would be like, you know, you're out in the jungle and you're faced with a tiger, right? You're actually threatened. But a lot of people have a lot of this psychological fear, which leads to the chronic stress. They dread getting up and going to work because maybe they do not like their jobs. They do not like what they're doing with their life. They're just doing it because they have to earn a living or pay bills. They may be in dysfunctional relationships and they dread coming home because they don't want to have another fight or an argument. They may be living with stress and fear around a chronic health condition because they have not taken the time or they have not been educated or they don't have the knowledge to know what they can do for their chronic illness beyond what the doctor prescribes. So I'm trying to get people to wake up and to realize that, you know, this is not the, you know, it is not the cataclysm that it's being painted as, but it is a time to, you know, you can't go outside, right? I mean, now things are opening up. We're in different phases of opening up, but for a long time you couldn't go outside. So when you can't go outside, where can you go? Where can you go? You can go within. So I'm trying to get people to understand that, you know, we all need to be going within, even when things are normal. If things, I mean, there's going to be a new normal, right? It's not going to be the same normal we had before, but we all need to go deep within. We need to go within to examine our thoughts, what emotions we're suppressing, because when you suppress your feelings, if they're negative feelings, they're going to get lodged in your body and lead to chronic stress. We need to feel everything we're feeling, even over something in the past, whether it's been a traumatic event or something, a neglect of some kind or anything else. We need to feel everything we're feeling. And we have to realize ourselves as we're not our physical body. We are not our thoughts. We are not our emotions. We are not the roles we play in society. We're not our job title. You know, you're not a father. You're not a mother. You're not a daughter. You're not a son. You're not a child. You're not. We are pure consciousness. We are pure being. We are awareness. We are not who we appear to be or other people see us as. We are beyond that. For spirit, soul, light, unconditional love, whatever word you want to use. If you don't like the word divine, use some other term, but we are pure being. We're pure consciousness. And you were talking about the American dream, Steve, and you're talking about success. You know, we've been defining success in terms of profit and financial terms and getting ahead, right? Getting ahead and the rat race, right? So you said something interesting, Steve. You said, you know, if you're an entrepreneur or if you earn $1 million, then you need to earn another million, or you're looking for the next, 10 million or whatever, right? So it's never ending. So the difference between pursuing material things is that when you pursue those material things, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with pursuing financial success. But when you pursue that, it increases your stress. Just ask any entrepreneur. And Steve, you're an entrepreneur, so you know. But when you pursue that inner success, that realization of your being, that consciousness, if you touch that part of yourself that is infinite, that is also, just like the pursuit of material success is never ending, it never ends. The pursuit of that inner success is also never ending. It's an infinite journey. And the difference is it does not cause stress. It actually puts you deeper into love, peace, serenity, connection, and it reveals who you truly are in your essence, in your core, which we all knew when we were born, but was lost due to societal conditioning, due to whatever influences we have, the education system, our extended families, government, religion, whatever. All of that becomes lost over time. So that going within puts us in touch with our true nature. It's an infinite journey. It never ends. And is, it increases over time in a positive way, unlike pursuit of material success.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. I love the way you synthesized a lot of things there, Nauman. And I'm so glad you're in the medical profession because there's a lot that you see, and then there's a lot you're doing with what you see in terms of where you're reframing what maybe the invitation is, what the opportunity is that is away from worry and false fears and false perceptions, false worldviews. It's amazing how on the conscious journey, it doesn't matter what author we speak about, whether it's Wayne Dyer, of course, who's now passed,
Mhm.
or Deepak Chopra or Neil Donald Walsh or Marianne Williamson. Doesn't matter, or the scientists, because they're of course affirming this is true too. It just nets down to something that's so simple,
Right.
and that we're actually on an eternal journey, that this is one lifetime of many, 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 and that we have unlimited potential, that we actually are the creator. We're all, we're a wave in the ocean of the creator, as is the earth, as is animal life, as is all of life. That's why it's called one. So we're all a part of that ocean, which we could call the divine or creator or whatever. But of course, we know God, the divine, the creator, source, to be perfect love and grace and peace and blessing and so many other things, these sublime qualities that we've all felt into, that's been a part of all of our lives to a greater or lesser extent. Um, and then when we get in touch with that, and this goes back to my own story in the 90s, where I really sat in my townhouse in Marin City, where I lived at the time. And I said, okay, I'm one of these two things, and I'm going to make a decision, and now my life will reflect the decision that I'm going to make. I'm either Steve Farrell in a body that is physicalized and that goes to dust, you know, and I'm going to just run this race and the whole. So I'm the Newtonian thing, I'm separate, right? And the Darwinian thing, I'm gonna grab as much treasure here as I can get my hands on, in this lifetime. And I'm gonna bring that treasure back to my home. We're gonna, have a castle here. We're gonna bring the treasure home, and we're gonna enjoy that treasure, you know. So that's my life. Or I'm this eternal being that just is just for that long on my eternal journey that's here in this body called Steve Farrell. That's actually the creator, a part of the divine, of God herself.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do, kind of get into that vibration of my most sublime qualities and really be of service, which is what we do when we're a part of the one. That's this whole higher self versus smaller self thing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do everything I can do. And then when my life review comes, which is also is a part of on the conscious journey, we've all heard this many times.
Yeah.
We review our life. It's a twofer. I'm going to enjoy my life of really living it as who I really am, aligned with ultimate reality. And then I get to watch what I did and say, hooray, it wasn't perfect, but I gave it my best. It looked pretty good.
Right.
So you can tell what decision I made, that I'm a part of source, of the divine.
And I'm glad you made that decision, Steve.
Yeah, and you have too, and we all kind of put different words to it, but in a way, that's the decision, in the go to the room moment that you described, Nauman, which is, who are we really, and then what values are we attaching to that, and how are we going to express that? Because I think, on the conscious journey, this planetary awakening thing is huge, of sometimes called heaven on earth and so on. Well, now how do we achieve that? I mean, in humanities team, we say we're going to achieve it in this lifetime. I'm 63, so we better get going. How do we really achieve that? I'm a business person by background, so I don't, I really deeply understand. I don't want to say, well, it's going to happen. Well, now I believe how we achieve that is Nauman, the things you were just talking about in your in healthcare, but you were extending it actually out to the whole world, where we're making these decisions. We're not fear. We're not gonna go to worry. We're not gonna go to false, worldviews. We're gonna go to who we really are. We're gonna, in a sense, all become conscious leaders. We're all gonna do this. We're gonna together lift up our civil society, our way of living, our community, our workplace, the world. That's the only way we can do it. There's no leader on high that will take us there. We're going to do that together. And of course, that's the mission and purpose of Humanities Team, is just to put all the tools that we can put in people's hands to support this whole planetary awakening, where we're doing this together as conscious leaders. And all of you viewers that are here, I know that's what you're working on too. So, and Nauman, I just want to say again, I love my job, because I talk to people like you. You're out, in hospitals and in the healthcare system, and you're bringing in, look, this is what's happening, in the daily world, and right now with the pandemic. And I love hearing, from your station in life, what's happening, and then what you're doing to help kind of direct people toward the within element, which is huge, because that's how we, as we talk about, like, being one with the divine or source or creator. Of course, that's the connection point, is the within. And if we don't go within, we go without. And so you kept coming back to that, and it's such a critical element. That's why our daily practice, our spiritual practice, nature, that's why it's so important, because that's really where, that's where that direction's coming from, and all of the guidance and the knocking the boulders out of the way is the within. Is like, okay, yeah, you're devoted to doing that, then just do it and don't worry. Boulders, I'll take care of the boulders. I'll do all the metaphysical stuff's going to happen. You just stay devoted, keep your eye on the planetary awakening, and I, the creator, will support that for you.
Yeah.
The boomerang effect,
Yeah, because I really see, like, right now, I honestly feel, and then I'm sure you agree with me, that we're at a turning point right now. Like, we have the potential. We've been dealing with so many global issues, right? And I already mentioned all of them. I'm not going to go through that list again, but we really have the potential to change the course of, like, your vision for Humanities Team. You said some people think it may be insane, but I don't. I think it's bold, and I feel it is possible. I see hope. I see, slowly people starting to wake up, people starting to see, how we've been living our lives, and how we have been on kind of an unsustainable path to destruction, to self-destruction, both individually and globally. And I like to, I have hope. I have that hope that there is a real potential to really shift humanity at this point. And the thing is that you just need to reach a threshold. Like, you don't need the majority of the global population. I don't know what the number is, but I believe Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book called The Tipping Point, and I read the book, but I can't remember. But I think if you get anywhere from 1% to 2% of the world's population living from a deeper place of consciousness, of asking these questions, about going deep within, and realizing that it's not all about just the pursuit of material happiness and just living in this chronic stress, and it's not just about the external world, but it's about our lives are lived within. Then you can create a domino effect. Because we are all connected, right? We are all one. That's the message of Humanities Team. We are all one. There is no separation between anybody. If you look at quantum science, quantum physics, and you break us down to our subatomic particles, quantum physics says that we are 99.129% empty space. So what does that mean? That means that the little part of us is matter. Most of us is empty space. We're just a vibrational frequency. That's all we are. This physical appearance that we see of each other and these solid objects all around us, it's just an illusion. It's just an illusion. And Deepak Chopra even goes as far as to say that we create our own reality. The universe is all within. I mean, everything that we see around us, it arises from our own perceptions. And like if we can get even that 1 to 2% of the global population going within and living from that deeper place, I believe because we are all connected, that we can create, that can spread to more people and create that domino effect. And
Yes, and of course there are many that share this too, Nauman. And several years ago, Ken Wilber was
yeah,
looking at this very same phenomena. And back at the time of the Civil War, he brings that time in because it was a similar inflection point moment where prior to the Civil War, the people of color, of course, they slave makes sense, and these
mhm,
are our beliefs, and they were severe, in terms of the implications of those beliefs. And then in a period of years, it just the whole thing unraveled,
yes,
and the beliefs just changed dramatically. And it started with 1%, and then went to 2, and then 4, and then you get to tipping point, as you mentioned,
right,
when you don't have to climb that high.
yeah,
But there was a very rapid and accelerated pace of belief system change that just changed our world entirely. And Ken Wilber said, as he was looking at that research, this is what I believe is happening here today as we talk about going from unconscious to conscious, that
yeah,
likewise it's spreading like that.
right,
So we believe as well that it's possible. And also, let me share, we didn't, when we talk about this lifetime, and creating planetary awakening, we didn't make that up in humanities team. It's not like we had a planning session and we said, well, when should this happen? And we said, let's do it in our lifetime, with some human
mhm,
Western strategic type planning session. It wasn't that at all.
mhm,
There's actually a lot of sacred text that says that this is occurring in this generation, that at this time, this was the whole Birth 2012 thing, which it should have been called Birth This Generation instead of Birth 2012. There's no way
yeah,
that, and the indigenous people and others that we're talking about it, they as well, they weren't thinking that, 2012 was magical and it just happens. It was saying, though, cause has been established and
mhm,
now effect is coming in. And there's
yes,
some period of years
yeah,
where this unfolding or evolution occurs. So this is what we did, is we just embraced the um, this wisdom that's been around forever, that now's really where we're pivoting. Now is when it's happening, that in this generation, in our lifetime, this is occurring. So that's how we embrace that goal and objective, and we do see it happening. And each viewer that's here now is here for a reason, because you're just like us. We're all carriers of the vision,
yeah,
of the awakening, of evolution, of transformation. And so we all have a big role to play. Let me just invite people there, it's out, we've got Zoom, but also people out on Facebook. And I don't know if any of the team is out on Facebook looking at comments or questions, but if there's anything that you want to bring in, we don't have a lot more time, and want to invite people if there's something you'd like to bring in, especially for Noman, because we don't get to do programs with him as often as we might like. Increasingly, we're doing transformational education. Got
yeah,
this really terrific program we're in now, but so we don't get to bring on special guests like Nolan as much as we'd like. So if there are things here that you'd like to share, please do. So let's see here. She feels the intention. Okay, so Megan thanks you for this wonderful presentation. When she goes within, she feels that intentional exposure to the virus is reasonable for some people, but she doesn't know how to navigate the waters of shaming that she sees in the world. People are being shamed out loud in person on social media and silently for following their own guidance, not wearing masks, etc. Does Dr. Naeem have any thoughts about this?
yeah. So I do have some thoughts about that. Unfortunately, because of the media and the world we live in, we do have to follow certain guidelines, right? I mean, the use of masks to protect yourself against COVID-19, that has come into question, right? I mean, that's controversial. And I don't have the evidence to say one way or the other, but right now, the recommendation is that we wear masks. So I would say that, you know, because of this is what society is telling us, then we should follow the rules and regulations of wherever you live in the world, whatever they're telling you, right? And when the waters of shaming that you see out in the world, the thing is that there is always going to be when someone takes a conscious journey, right? When someone decides to go within or to face their negative thinking, to deal with their limiting beliefs, to really unpack who they truly are, to trace their narrative, to disidentify with their life story, it takes courage because the majority of people are not on this path, right? I mean, those who are on this path, the inner path, I'm not saying I'm a pioneer of this. I mean, there's so many people that are on this, but it's something that I am on. We're really explorers. We're going into unseen and unknown territory. And I say that because the majority of the world's population is not doing this. And often it's because of experiences and challenges and negative experiences and those things that they're afraid to go within because of what's going to come up. So it does take courage to take that path. So what I would say to someone who, is talking about the waters of shaming and being shamed out in person, you need to find common ground you need to find common company, right? I mean, someone once said, you are the average of the 5 people who you spend the most time with. You can find those people. You can find those people who are on the same journey, who will support you. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to be against you, but find the people who are going to support you. Because by taking that inner journey, you're not doing anyone any harm, right? You have to follow some of the rules in society, but you're not doing anyone harm. You can find those people through Humanities Team, and you can find them through, the wonderful speakers and authors that Humanities Team features. I mean, there's so many of them. Go to their websites, get in touch with their communities. You can find those people out there. So find the support you need, and you need courage to take this path. It's not for the weak, the faint of heart, because it's not the norm right now. And I'm hoping one day it does become the norm in my lifetime.
Yeah, boy, beautiful. And let me add to that, just on a spiritual level. I truly believe every single one of you, every single one of us is the daughter, son of the Creator. Now, so where that's true, imagine what that means. Imagine what that means in terms of who you really are, and what powers you have. And so I just invite people. That's part of this whole within journey where we get in touch with that, where you're going within. I personally feel the divine sharing with me. Go, Steve. Turn it up. Go. Hit it. Let's go. Don't worry about anything in your path or resources. That's my job. I'll take care of that. You just do it, man. And I believe that's what the divine is actually sharing with each of us when we go within. I am, Sharon, Megan, Mike, John, to all of us, you are my son. You are my daughter. Burn it up. Make it happen. I'll turn it all on for you.
And I just want to add something, if I can add something to that, Steve.
Yeah.
Just going on my own journey, I mean, it's funny because, I have no fear because, in the medical profession, I mean, a lot of physicians have huge egos, right? And they see me doing this work and writing this book and then, doing my blog and doing these podcasts and these interviews. And I have no fear. I'm not afraid of what anyone thinks. In fact, I don't care what anybody thinks of what I'm doing because I still look after my patients the same way they do. I give them the care that they need and beyond. And just like you said, Steve, I know that I am being looked after. I am being watched over by something greater than myself. And if I am on the wrong path, I will get that sign. I will get that bolt of lightning or whatever it is. But my intuition tells me that I am on, and I follow my intuition. I get in touch with my inner being. I meditate on a regular basis. And if I feel that I'm on the wrong path, and I know I'm going to be guided to the right path if I'm on the wrong path. And if I'm on the right path, what do I have to fear? What do I have? Do I have to fear other people? No, I have nothing to fear. Uh, I have nothing to fear if I'm on the right path. Just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that in. Thank you. And you're right. Doctors, as we healthcare professionals, they're highly educated, highly compensated. And I do see, the ego that you speak of. And so I can imagine where you have the reputation that you do, how that might, how people might interact with you. So thank you for bringing that in. And so when you're telling people, hey, have courage, you've got a lot of courage to be doing what you're doing, because I'm sure this isn't, people aren't holding up Nauman as the example here, everybody. The one day that I think that'll happen actually in the world that we're creating, but we're not there now. As you mentioned, we're pioneers now, and a lot of people actually want to marginalize people like you and me and others. But again, and I feel the same way of wherever I'm even slightly off the path, much less, largely off the path. I am guided so fast. I can feel, there's automatic steering here.
Right.
It's within, where it's GPS. You just have a straight route.
Right. And I was just saying, I'm going to add to that. It's not like I'm out there like a preacher. Don't get me wrong. Like I really, I don't take myself too seriously, right? And my colleagues know that. I don't take myself too seriously. I mean, I have a good sense of humor, and my colleagues see that. And I do it through other means. Like I get in through the back door, through my humor, through not taking things seriously, by telling people everything's going to be okay. It's not like I'm out there with my book and just saying shoving it in people's face. No, I do it through humor. I do it through other means as well. So
yeah,
there's different.
We laugh a lot in humanities team too.
Yeah,
we love to laugh.
But you can't take things too seriously, no matter what's going on.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, life is such an incredible gift.
It is,
and it has. So, and we're not out on street corners trying to bang anybody over the head.
No.
It's an invitation as well. It is.
It is.
And everybody in their own time will come in and really, I think, understand they are indeed the daughter/son of the Creator. And they'll be guided to their station in life. So with that, this hour went fast. Let me invite my partners to come on so you can meet them here, the ones that make these programs possible. So they'll come on camera here, and they create the marketing, the program itself, bring us onto Facebook. There's Dee Meyer. She's the Director of Operations. Angel
Hi
friend,
there.
Karen
Hi.
Gordon, who runs communications. Angel
Hi.
friend there. Garth Catterall, he's the IT guy that makes sure we don't go down all the time. And Barbara, she comes on camera. So, and Garth runs IT, and Barbara has her hands in so many things, including out on social media. So, and this is some of the team. Of course, there are many others that aren't here, including country coordinators and country contacts in 40 countries. So, all volunteers. So, thank you all for joining us. Nauman, it is such a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you. What a wonderful hour it's been. It's really been, very, very touching, Karen.
I'd like to thank you for having me on, and I've enjoyed having this conversation, which I think is a necessary conversation at this time.
Yeah. Oh, I'll say it is very necessary. Thank you for taking the time off, and to whoever's covering for you on your shift there at at your healthcare hospital facility.
Yeah.
Great to be with you, and love to you, my friend. Thank you for all the great work you're doing. And happy July 4th, people here in the United States. Big holiday tomorrow. Today's actually a federal holiday. So enjoy your time together, and happy Interdependence Day. So, and we'll be back with you. We'll be back on the air here soon. Again, we're going to a monthly format, first Friday of the month with Tim Noah. So if you're in Community Circle and Humanity Stream or in one of our master programs. So look forward to being with you then. And of course, we've got You Are Limitless going on right now with Michael Bernard Beckwith and Panache Desai. So we'll be back on the air doing viewing weekend here, I think next weekend. So thanks everybody. Thanks for being with us. Love and thanks always. Namaste.
Namaste.